Welcome to Punky's Pro Wrestling. Turn this just a little bit. I was going to do a wrestling news video, but something bigger came up. So, I'm going to do a wrestler passings video. Hulk Hogan has passed away. He was 71 years old. He would have turned 72 on August 11th in just a few weeks. I'm going to give you a little bio. Keep in mind, not a fan, but I certainly wouldn't wish him ill. It's certainly not dead. He started wrestling in 1977. He had been a musician and a bouncer before that. It's actually how he met his first wife, the mother of his children. It was when he was bouncing. He was legitimately 6 feet 7 inches tall, although it's said when he passed away he was about 6 feet 4 inches tall because of issues with his back and stuff. That's not unusual to lose a few inches. He made a name for himself in the AWA as Terry the Hulk Boulder. He actually started his career as Sterling Golden. That didn't last very long. And he was Terry Boulder, then he was Terry the Hulk Boulder. And that's where he started making a name for himself in the AWA, like I said. He had shaved his chest hair to look like an atom bomb mushroom cloud. He was brought into the WWF by Vince McMahon Sr. under the tutelage of Classy Freddie Blassie. Now, I use that term specifically because I'm actually honoring another passed away legend. I'll give you a minute to guess and I'll tell you who. Well, if you guessed Gorilla Monsoon, you're correct. He used to say that. Since he came under the tutelage of Name That Heel Manager, that's how he would say it. It just means the tutoring of, the teaching of. But, yeah. So I use that word to honor Gorilla Monsoon. Gosh, I learned so much from him. Anatomy-wise, English language-wise, yeah. So he left the company, but he came back in 1983. And soon Vince Jr. decided to turn him babyface. Because he needed an all-American babyface to beat the evil Russian Ivan Koloff for the World Championship, for the WWF at that time, championship. And so he turned Hogan into the All-American. And he, his first theme song was Eye of the Tiger. Anyone old enough to remember that? Then, I think it was around WrestleMania that they had Real American written and produced for him. After that, Vince brought in Roddy Piper to be Hogan's heel counterpart. The rest is history. I mean, amazing wrestling history. Like I mentioned, Hogan was 71 years old, due to turn 72 on August 11th. He died of cardiac arrest in his home. Wondering if he had a blood clot having to do with the surgery. And that's what caused the cardiac arrest. I don't know. I'm sure an autopsy will be performed. I mean, this is Hulk Hogan. WWE has released a statement, and I have it here. This is a quote. WWE is saddened to learn WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan has passed away. One of pop culture's most recognizable figures, Hogan helped WWE achieve global recognition in the 1980s. WWE extends its condolences to Hogan's family, friends, and fans. Not too many of the last category there, but excuse me. He's done a lot of things to harm his reputation among fans, but I'm not speaking ill of the dead. I'm not. I just remember that I went sour on him around WrestleMania 2. Sorry. I always jump when that goes off. Around WrestleMania 2. And there was also a segment that was done about him on a those little half-hour news and public interest shows like Inside Edition and stuff like that. Not so much Access Hollywood, because that's just a whole bunch of interviews thrown together, but like Inside Edition, where they would do different actual segments. Well, they had a segment on Hogan, and he treated them so badly. It did not look good for him at all. And if I'm Vince, I'm pulling him aside saying, what? But yeah, it did not go well. And right after that was WrestleMania 2, and I saw the way he treated a little girl when he was going to the ring. I've told this story before. She reached up to pat his leg, and he's so tall, but she reached up to pat his leg, or pat his, I think she reached up to pat his back, and he's so tall that she patted his bum. She couldn't have been more than 3. He turned around and gave her a look, if looks could kill. And between that and that segment, I was done with Hogan. Then Roddy Piper turned babyface. And yay! You know how I feel about Roddy Piper. And any fans that you talk to from that time period who met Hogan and who met Piper didn't like Hogan and loved Piper. So I don't know what that says about his personality toward fans, his reaction toward fans. Sorry, my breathing's a little wacky today. So, like I said, I'm not speaking ill of the dead. I'm just being honest. We all have our bad days, It's just that as the internet started becoming a place for wrestling fans, and they were able to talk to one another about wrestlers they met and stuff, kayfabe went bye-bye for the most part, and you were able to find out what they were really like when they met fans, when the cameras weren't rolling, you know what I mean? And one thing that I learned pretty quickly was that the heels were sweethearts and the baby faces were jerks for the most part. I mean, that's a blanket statement, but for the most part, that is what I learned. I'm not directly calling him a jerk. I'm just saying that what I learned was that the baby faces weren't the nice guys. Heels were. uh, for whatever reason. And I will say this, okay? I'm not, like I said, I'm not speaking ill of the dead. I will say this. Hogan had a huge, lasting, forever impact on the wrestling business. There's no question. And even though I absolutely despise Vince McMahon, that was also due in great part, to Vince McMahon's forethought when it came to Hogan. You know, Hogan didn't create the character. Vince McMahon did. I'm sure they did it together, but yeah, the idea of him turning babyface, being an All-American, and beating the evil Russian, who, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Ivan Koloff was not Russian. Ivan Koloff was French-Canadian, and it's kind of funny now to watch him try to speak Russian in a French accent. It's really kind of funny, you know, try to speak with like you're a Russian with a French accent. So, but when you're young, those things don't occur to you, and you get older and you go, something's off here. So, he also, in the last years of his life, well, actually the last 20 or 30 years of his life, had turned his life over to Christ. He had become a minister. Pretty cool. He kind of followed in Nikita's footsteps, because Nikita's ordained as well. As is Ted DiBiase, as is Tully Blanchard. But we've talked about that, I believe, in another video, if I'm not mistaken. The wrestlers that have turned their lives to Christ. And some that were Christians before they started, like AJ Styles. Frankie Kazarian's a Christian. I think Christopher Daniels is a Christian. I know that he grew up Catholic, but I think he is a Christian. So, George South, I mean, I don't have to name them all. And in saying that, I believe that Hogan was a Christian. I do believe that. So I'm not going to judge things he said, things he did. I'm just going to tell you what my feelings were when I saw certain things. You know what I mean? I think my mother used to say, well, we don't speak ill of the dead. We're honest about the person that they were. And no human being is perfect and without flaw, including me. So I try very hard to live a life for Christ, but I make mistakes. If I didn't, he wouldn't have had to die for me, you know? And I do believe Hogan was a Christian. I do believe he was a believer, you know? Therefore, I believe he's in heaven. I think part of his problem was he got too much too soon in the business, and it just kind of it blew up his head for a while, which is true in a lot of cases, I think, in a lot of sports. Oh, Chris Jericho, that's another one. Eddie Guerrero, but we had a whole video on that. Anyway, um, Hogan was a man, like I said, who changed the industry with his character, his charisma. He was able to carry the character that Vince created. I think that Vince took it too far in the sense that Hogan became his pet project, and so he just handed him everything on a silver platter. And when you're used to that treatment, it's hard not to be used to it. So, but remember that even with his character and, with the Hulk Hogan character and uh, the push from the company, my friend just texted me to tell me. So I'll get back to her in a moment. Um, so, um, when Vince has a pet and that pet is making him millions upon millions of dollars, that's what he's going to focus on. Which, if somebody's making you millions and millions of dollars, it makes sense in a way to want to protect them. Now, you shouldn't be doing that at the expense of your other wrestlers, because you have to remember, like I said, even with Hulk Hogan's charisma, with the character that was created, the push that he was given, he wouldn't have been able to go anywhere without a great heel. So if there's no Roddy Piper, there's no Hulk Hogan. And a lot of people did not recognize that and do not recognize that. So, and that's important to keep in mind. Now they're main eventing Heavenly WrestleMania. So, and I do and will pray for his family, his children, his current wife, even for Linda. That was the father of her children. No matter what went down between them at the end of their marriage, they were married for 28 years. He was the father of her children. It's gotta hurt. Not so much for the middle wife, but so I will keep them in my prayers, and I hope that you do too. No matter what I felt about the man, I never had ill will toward him or anyone else. I never wished him harm. The only thing I ever wished is that he would go away already. Meaning, retire, leave wrestling alone, concentrate on your acting or whatever, That's all I ever wished for him. I never wished this. This is terrible. So, thank you so much for joining me. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you next time. And remember, SummerSlam is next weekend, not this weekend. Bye, guys.